Session, Las Cruces City Council. Today is Monday, October 23rd, 2023. It's approximately 1 p.m. Before we begin, if you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we're going to start off with the Pets of the Week, and Kimberly Aceves. Are you there, Kimberly? Were you able to get your mic working?
Ask him. Can you hear
Can
me?
you hear me?
Is that you, Kimberly?
Yes.
Yes, all right. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
But we don't see your screen. Okay, there you go.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, yeah, got it. Thank you. Okay, hi, I'm Kimberly. I work at the Animal Services Center. So for the Pet of the Weeks, we have Milo. He's a bit of a timid kitty, but once he gets comfortable with you, he's all loving. He was surrendered due to scratching up some of the stuff in the house. So if you are interested in him, I recommend getting some of those cat scratch posts for him. But he is a really sweet kitty. And then we have, for our dog of the week, we got Mookie. So Mookie has been in and out of the shelter, but it's not necessarily his fault. He has been, he's mostly just really timid, but he is very loving. Once he gets comfortable with you, he will show his true colors. But it will take some time. So just keep that in mind for him. But he is very kind. Our adoption events, we have one at PetSmart this weekend at starting at 10 and ending at 1, and that's the PetSmart on Loman. And we are still having our special for this month. It's the Paws and Claws Spooktacular. So all adoptions are discounted, $50 for all animals that are already spayed and neutered, and $100 for all the animals that are not fixed yet. And senior pets are free. So when you adopt a pet, just keep in mind that they are going into a new environment. So they'll just, they're not going to show their true colors until they get more comfortable in their new home. There's a thing that we call suggestion of 3. It takes 3 days for an animal to kind of get comfortable. 3 weeks, they are starting to adjust to the habits around the home. And 3 months is when they're fully comfortable in their new environment. We give out little pamphlets in our adoption bags. In there, there's something that's called Rough to Ready. It's with the Doniana Humane Society. You just let them know that you adopted from the shelter, and they can do some free training. I believe it's 2 free sessions, but we also recommend that if you need more training, you can reach out to local trainers, and we also provide some information on some of the local trainers in those goodie bags. And that's all that I got for you today.
Thanks, Kimberly. Did you say, you kind of went over it kind of fast, so if you're a senior, you can have your dog or cat spay or neuter for free? Is that what I heard?
No, I'm sorry. So if the animal is a senior pet,
Oh, if the
it would be a
animal's a senior
free
pet.
adoption.
Oh, what do you call an animal?
We age them, once they hit 8 years and older, they are considered senior pets.
Oh, I see. Okay, I was just curious. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next is Jobs of the Week. Sarah Rainey, are you there, Sarah?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Sarah Rainey. I am the one-stop coordinator for the Southwest region of the Workforce Connection. Let me share my screen. I'll stop my video as well. I believe someone needs to stop sharing. Let me try again. There we go. And okay. Okay, for jobs of the week, we have for the city of Las Cruces, we have fleet maintenance supervisor. That position starts at 53,000. The posting closes on 10/30, so next Monday. We also have for the city of Las Cruces, heavy equipment operator for the solid waste department. That one begins at 19.51 an hour. That posting as well ends on Monday, October 30th. For the White Sands Missile Range, we have a help desk support specialist. It's H2 Performance Consulting is, I believe, the contractor. They did not post a salary range, but you can check it out. That posting is open until January. So we also have an outside sales representative for the medical equipment, for the Lynn Care company. That one begins, I believe, at $12 an hour, depending on experience, they listed. And the posting is open until November 15th. For Chaparral Materials, they have a delivery driver, a CDL delivery driver. So if you have your CDL, this is a good opportunity. That posting or that position pays $32,000 to $51,000 a year, depending on experience. And the posting closes on November 13th. Also for Chaparral Materials, they have an inside sales position. That position begins at $31,000 a year and the posting closes on November 12th. As always, feel free to, just a reminder to you guys, the Workforce Connection office is the employment office. So if you're looking for a job, you're looking for temporary, remote, in-house, whatever you're looking for, we are the connection to get you in there and to get you those connections throughout our community and throughout our region as well. You're welcome to join us at 226 South Alameda or call at 524-6250. We appreciate it. Thank you all for having us again.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, so before we begin, I have one proclamation to make. And Richard Weaver, you want to join me up front here? We couldn't get you on our council meeting, so we thought we'd include you here. So, and plus, Halloween's coming up real quick. So what's I don't know if you remember when we first started doing this, we would have you, and then we'd have a proclamation for, I don't know if it was like National Dentistry Week.
Cool Smiles.
Cool Smiles. So they talk about, first you get your candy and then go to the dentist after that.
No, he was gathering and buying candy and sending it to the troops overseas.
No, but there was also, okay, well, that's good, but there was also something where it seemed like it was interesting that.
It's a conflict.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so thank you for doing this. So let me read, I have a proclamation to read to you. Whereas Richard Weaver, owner of Weaver's Welding, wanted an event to bring young people and authority figures together in a friendly, non-threatening atmosphere. And whereas he and many friends of the community sponsored the first Great Pumpkin Candy Drop in 2006, and whereas he formed Friends of the Community, a 501c3 organization, and whereas he rented Mag Park, solicited donations of cash and or candy, and invited kids, young and old, and whereas he also invited Las Cruces Police Department, Las Cruces Fire Department, Doña Ana County Sheriff's Posse, public officials, and everyone who represents authority, and whereas he has grown the candy drop to include all 4 fields at Mag Park with music, events, and booths, his only mandate is that everything is free. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor, City Council of Las Cruces, New Mexico, do hereby proclaim Sunday, October 29th, 2023, as the Friends of the Community Candy Drop Day, and encourage everyone to support Friends of the Community and help them provide a safe, fun event for young people. Attested to by Christine Rivera, our city clerk, and myself, Ken Miyagishima. So thank you again, Richard, for all you do. Thank you.
Those of you who have not attended the Candy Drop, bring your kids, your grandkids, the kids you don't claim or don't want at home. I'll hype them up for you and send them back to you. Those of you that would like to come down, dignitaries might get to pull the rope on one of the buckets and let the kids scramble for candy. And I continue to appreciate your support. Thank you.
We appreciate it very much, Richard. Thank you very much. Okay, if you want to make your way up, Mr. Melendres, to the podium. So, a while back, you should have received an email from Christine. There was minutes of a work session in 2011. So, Mr. Melendres is a direct descendant of the founder of Las Cruces, okay? And so, that's the reason for what they call Founders Day. And the council at that time liked the idea, but there was a few questions that they wanted answered. And so what I did is I highlighted them, and I sent them to city manager Christine, and so she should have sent those to you. You probably just received it. So Mr. Melendres is going to talk a little bit about his great-great-great-grandfather and how he founded Las Cruces, and then if he can answer the questions of the then council, and then any questions that you might have, because theirs was pretty germane. It probably would, you might even have the same questions today. But, so anyways, Mr. Melendres.
Thank you, Mayor.
I just need you to state your name, even though I called you.
sorry?
I just need you to state your name, even though I already called you.
My name is Carlos Melendres. I'm a great-great-grandson of Pablo Melendres, who founded the city of Las Cruces in 1849. Want me to?
You can continue.
Okay. Thank you very much. As I mentioned, Pablo Melendres did found this city in 1849, but he actually arrived here in 1843 when this area was Mexico, and he was one of the first petitioners for creating the Doñana Bend colony. And during that time, it got too crowded. His history in the development of southern New Mexico is worthy of praise, but just not actually publicized or even understood, and I'm hoping that we can correct this. I started out to do this close to 12 years ago, and I addressed the council. We did go ahead, and because that was the bicentennial, and there must have been 20, 30 Melendres' descendants in Las Cruces for the bicentennial. And so we addressed the council, and they were kind enough to go ahead and establish Founders Month. But I'm here before you to try and establish Founders Day to be celebrated on a yearly basis. And if I might take just a quick moment and explain why Pablo is worthy of this honor. Not only because he is the founder and blood, or shall we say DNA of mine, but his strong history. Let me just explain in one quick moment, if I might. First of all, well, let me back up for a moment. When I first appeared 12 years ago, in the old city hall, you would go in through the portico and it would say, "Welcome to the city of Las Cruces by founder Lieutenant Sackett." Now, Lieutenant Sackett was a very worthy person, but he was stationed here for 2 years, ultimately became the Inspector General of the U.S. Army, so I can see why we wanted to go ahead and consider him our founder. But he, in fact, was here for 2 years, and due to the overcrowding in Doñana, Pablo Melendres asked the Lieutenant Sackett at the time, to go ahead and plat a new city, quote, in the American style. Now, since that time, we were able to go ahead and correct that and establish Pablo as founder, and now we want to take it one step further. And again, in mentioning some of the just tremendous work that this man had done in the development of New Mexico, let me just give you one quick example of why I want to go ahead and see if we can't laud this man's history. During that time in the 1850s, these farms were spread far apart, and Pablo Melendres happened to find one cow that was on his property, and it was unmarked. It had no branding. So what would an honest man do? Ordinarily, you can't find the owner because you start asking anyone who owns this cow, and everybody says, yes, it's mine. What Pablo did as an example, and this is a man who was in charge of the Doñana County, which was from the border of Texas all the way to California at that time, to the southern edge of San Diego. Now, with that kind of responsibility, and he was only answerable only to the governor of New Mexico, so they could hire, fire, and shoot. And there were about at least 3 hangings there in Doñana during that time. It was the Wild West. But what he did with this cow, because he knew he couldn't possibly determine who owned it, what he did is he sold it and gave the proceeds to Doñana. Now, he was razzed for that act of honesty in the newspapers, but in fact, it shows you the humility of the man that I have found. And yet, when I started to do my research here, I was fearful because of a man with that much power. I was expecting to find a lot more where he used and wielded the power, and the power at that time was the power of the gun. But no. I found a very, very humble man, and I just gave you one example of who that man was. Now, one thing that came up during my research on Pablo Melendres, at that time, when all the violence was going on, he gave sanctuary to the Apaches. He allowed them to be in the Doñana area and help celebrate the various gatherings that were there. And in my book, I ended up having to write a book about this man's history. I was so impressed with him. And I found out that, in fact, Pablo Melendres not only provided sanctuary for them in a very, very difficult time, but as an example of how difficult it was during those times, there was one of the local militias from one of the local communities here, actually was in Mesilla. They dressed themselves up as Indians, painted themselves, and they were riding through Las Cruces, drinking from flasks. They went into Doñana, and they slaughtered 6 or 7 of the Apaches who had gathered there peacefully for that celebration. Now, they were acquitted, and the governor said, you know, that's an action that should be repeated. These were the times. And one thing that I found out about that and the difficult times that we lived in and how we interpret them is that I also found out during my research, and I came upon this term called high carnival. I mentioned that in my book, and a historian called me, wrote me a letter actually, and she said, Carlos, we do our work, we write about people, we study the history, and every now and then a term comes up that is just shattering to our conscience. So she said, I'm hoping that you find out more of what the term means, high carnival. And she suggested that I talk to Alex Mares. Alex Mares is a person who works at the Mesilla Bosque. He's an interpreter. His father was Navajo, his mother was Mexican. Now he told me, what do you know about the term high carnival? I says, I know very little other than that a lot of the native tribes used to gather here north of Mesquite Street, right a little bit north of Mesquite Street, and they would gather and celebrate what they called high carnival. When I talked to Alex Mares about what that term meant in Spanish, he says, Carlos, the Spaniards used to call that mitote. For those of you that are bilingual, if you'll understand what that term means, that means something scandalous. something scandalous in those times because they were not privy to it, but the tribes would gather here north of Mesquite. They would do their trading. It was primarily for trading and celebration, much as you find nowadays in Europe, where I think during the solstice they were celebrating, and naturally when you're young, so the newspapers called it raucous, a raucous crowd. Of course it was. They're celebrating, they're full of life, and they want to celebrate life. So we had that capacity here, and we've lost it. We've ceded all of our indigenous history to Albuquerque and Santa Fe so that they can celebrate the gathering of nations. I'm here to tell you we're just as much indigenous as they are. We have that history, but we've ceded it to them. We do not celebrate it. So I am trying to do two things. One, first of all, to see if I could not get the council to approve establishing Founders Day, putting a committee together so we could figure out a way to celebrate it. And there's a number of ways that I'm hoping that we can ultimately celebrate it. At that time, when I initially proposed this, I was working with Mark Medoff because I told him that I had information here about that fight. Many of you people know about the shootout in Mesilla where 9 people died and over 50 were injured. That fight was over land. It was not because a bunch of drunks got together and they ended up meeting at the plaza. It was much more important and much more intricate than that and detailed than that. And so I'm hoping that this, anyway, so Mark, before he died, he wanted me to work with him and see if we couldn't make a movie about that, because it was the founder's son of Las Cruces, Pablo Jr., who was the chief protagonist there. But before I get lost in that area, let me say that there's a lot of interest and a lot of history that we just have not been aware of here. And I'm hoping that I can help that. And in my latest book, I know where the bodies are buried, and that has to do with Pablo and his daughter, who I claim are buried in the chapel in Doñana. But there's so many issues that I'm trying to bring in here, and I'm trying to limit myself because I know I have short time here. Now, as I mentioned, if we can go ahead and get through and establish and recognize Pablo as founder and deem him worthy that we could celebrate him every year, that would be wonderful. But I've been asking for information as to how to proceed with these various subjects. And a good friend of mine, former county supervisor, Oscar Vasquez Butler, and as I understand he may be running again, but nonetheless, he was the one who suggested how I might approach this and asked to see if this council might also approve, because if we can approve the Founders Day today, but what's lacking is I'd like to pursue the idea of mitote, of the Renaissance fair. That's the only thing that has a lot of people that it attracts here, and I would like to go ahead and compete with that, see if we could recognize our indigenous heritage and celebrate another day, and celebrate it whether it be within Founders Day or outside of Founders Day. There's a lot of politics as to how many celebrations you want to have in a year, how they fit in, and I would hope that a council member might also put a motion here and saying that at the beginning of the year with a new administration, this would be a priority, so I could address the council again, but give you a lot more detail as to what mitote means and how important it is that we recognize our indigenous history, especially in these divisive times. It's absolutely necessary that we do that. And so unless you have more questions or other questions, I'll be happy to comply and answer any questions you might have.
So thank you, Carlos. Let's kind of stick to, I think what you have brought forward is a lot of good information, a lot of, sounds like a lot of fun to work on. But I think one of the things that I mentioned to you that I would prefer is to at least go through, and the council should have the minutes, to go through some of the questions that I even asked you of, so that you can respond, and then I'll open up to questions from the council. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, so on page 26 of the notes from then work session of June 2011, Councilor Small asks, he says, I know that the town of Mesilla has entertained discussions about learning more and finding ways to celebrate Founder's Day. And I think it's wise for us to move forward on this, and certainly to enlarge in other parts of the community. But as it goes on, it says, to basically work with Mesilla. Have you reached out to Mesilla regarding Founder's Day?
Yes, I have, but there's some confusion in how that was stated. We simply wanted to go ahead and inform Mesilla as to how much of a significance Pablo Jr. had also performed there in Mesilla within that riot and other actions that he'd taken as a supervisor, because he was a supervisor for 3 times, and as I understand, the only reason he wasn't elected on the 4th time was because he raised taxes 3 times. A conundrum I think all of you understand. So we did talk to the persons in Mesilla, but in fact, I'm hoping that we can help them establish their own founder. Maybe Rafael, there are several couple of people that might fit that bill, but I don't want it confused that Founders Day would be the same thing in Mesilla, because they're absolutely separate communities.
Okay, and then another on page 27, then City Manager Robert Garza, after listening to all the comments, it says, I think the next step would be simply sitting down with Mr. Melendres and bringing to the table some of those documents that he talked about having our public information office, so then kind of put together a game plan. Did you ever meet with Robert? And did you ever bring those documents?
Yes, I did, and let me explain on that. I had met with him because we had thought one of the ideas was that the city here has such a good history of making documentaries, and so they basically offered to go ahead and see if we couldn't put together a good history of the founder. And I demurred, and for the reason was because at that time I was talking with Mark Medoff. He was very excited about this, and we were talking about something that might be even a feature film. And so the idea is that we cut off discussions because they were very promising at the time until politics interfered. But the idea was we were going to go ahead and consider making a good movie, a documentary about the shootout in Mesilla. And so that's why we did not follow through, but I'd like to go ahead and this time, if we establish Founders Day, I'm willing to work with everyone. At that time, we had even the president, interim president of NMSU, who was supporting this issue because he wanted to get the film group there at NMSU involved. And Danny Villanueva, I used to work for Danny, or I worked with Danny in Los Angeles when he would come by here, and I had talked to him about helping us support a movie, and he was very excited about the idea. Unfortunately, politics interfered, people die, and so I'm back at it again, and I'm hoping you have some interest in this area.
Well, as I mentioned to you, I didn't need to star in the movie. I just wanted to be a co-star, so.
I'm sorry?
I'm just playing. I was just messing with you. Okay, so there was another comment by a former counselor and Mayor Pro Tem Emeritus, Sharon Thomas. She says, we have a standing exhibit in the Brannigan Center that has a history of Las Cruces, and that if we're going to think about incorporating the Melendres information, we definitely have to look at that. So did you have a chance to go to Brannigan and see how the information that they have about Mr. Sackett and how the information you have on Mr. Melendres, how that can incorporate into that information that's at the Brannigan?
Yes, I have worked with some of the people, but I intend to hopefully within the next couple of months, because I've gathered so much more absolutely fascinating information about who this man was, that I want to go ahead and have another meeting with the director and try and establish some of the history that's not been known. And even in this book that I wrote about the family, other things have come to light that are not reflected, and I most definitely want to work with the Cultural Center to go ahead and establish that history so it's well known.
Okay, so now I'm going to open up to questions from council. Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mr. Melendres, for your presentation, which I definitely support. So you had, you spoke with Mark Madoff. Have you spoken with Ross Marks at this point?
No, I have not.
Okay. And have you reached out to Film Las Cruces?
I'm sorry?
Have you reached out to Film Las Cruces?
The new owner, the new director of Film Las Cruces just came in about a month ago. I've prepared a letter for her. I wanted to give her some space to breathe a little bit because she did say in her acceptance when she became the director of Film Las Cruces that first off she wanted to learn about the history of Las Cruces so she could have some base of operation. And I know she's been here maybe a little over a month, and my letter is still waiting on my computer.
Well, I suggest that you contact Senator Jeff Steinborn.
Yes, I have talked with Senator Steinborn.
Okay, great. And thank you so much for capturing this part of history, which is so important because I agree with you. We are mestizo. We're a mestizo nation. And we don't pay enough homage to the fact that we carry that beautiful indigenous blood. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. And just to be clear, so I think what Mr. Melendres was hoping was that we can at least move forward with some type of, in the future, a resolution that recognizes a particular day and a committee to come up with one particular day that's, I don't think he's asking that city employees get the day off, but it just recognizes the Founders' Day of Las Cruces. And I think he just kind of, there was a tangent. They want a day off, okay. Well, just as a tangent, he brought up the movie. So I don't know if he was trying to get, that might become later, but.
Well, no, it's just that there were steps already taken in that direction,
Yeah, okay.
And I think it'd be very helpful to be, it's not a one-way, it's not like a one-lane highway,
Okay.
so.
Okay, I just wanted to.
I
Okay,
understand
okay.
why he's here, and I support a Founder's Day, absolutely, thank
Okay.
you.
Mayor Pro Tem. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Beta, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I was going to say this seems appropriate to go into our quality of life PRC so that we can take a look at what Founders Day would mean to New Mexico and that robust history, and we know we have a multicultural look, so I think it would be there. We do have representation from different individuals throughout the community, so it seems like it would be appropriate if it went over there. As our speaker has suggested, after January, we could place it on the agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Melendres, for getting to this point. You and I have met a few times, and I've been to a meeting with Doñana Arts Council and yourself, looking at the opportunities that, with a number of celebrations and what would be the best one. I think anytime we can celebrate Las Cruces, I think it's a worthwhile venture, so I wish you luck. I think it's a great idea, and I would recommend that it go through the Quality of Life PRC. So thank you for all your work in coming here to this point. It's been last summer, maybe, or last spring, I don't remember, but I know you've been working along, and anything I'd recommended you've done, and I'm so appreciative, so thank you.
And if I might just respond in this manner, there was a lot of interest in the idea of High Carnival, and they thought this would be an attraction, obviously, and a historic attraction and a recognition of our indigenous heritage. But they were also toying with the idea at the Arts Council, see if we could pair it with the Renaissance Fair. The English celebration that we have here, and evidently is the largest celebration where people come into the city. And I do not feel comfortable with that. I think it should stand on its own.
Sure.
And so therefore the idea of High Carnival or Mitote needs a lot of more exploration. and I would love to work with this committee, and I'm hoping I get an invitation, or I will reach out to you to see if we can establish that right at the beginning of the year. I'm getting long in tooth. I'm 82 years old. I have some health issues, and I want to absolutely finish this work. It's been 20 years in the making. In the meantime, when I first brought it up over 12 years ago, because I ended up being friends with Harlan Geronimo and met with him several times, and I ended up calling another friend of mine, Ramsey Clark, who used to be the former U.S. Attorney General, and we tried to bring the remains of Geronimo home. And so this took 10 years out of my life, and so I'm back here again focusing on what I should have from the beginning, and I'm asking for your help.
Yeah, thank you again for recognizing our indigenous population and just wanting to celebrate that. I think it's an important thing, and I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
And I hope I don't embarrass the mayor by this, but I'm going to mention that he too has approximately a quarter indigenous heritage, and so a lot of us are mestizos. This is who we are, and this is what we want to celebrate. Thank you.
May I make a
And I
comment?
am too, so thank you.
And thank you, Carlos, for explaining that I didn't drop the ball. You were gone for 10 years, because I wondered where you went. I'm like, we did all this, and then you take off, and you're back, so. We have Counselor Graham, and then, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had just raised my hand acknowledging that I'm on the Quality of Life PRC.
Oh,
I was just
see.
waving.
Okay,
Thanks.
all right. Counselor Flores.
I just want to say, I think you said that, embarrassed to have indigenous blood? Or what is it you said? I'm sorry.
No, no, we're very proud of our indigenous heritage, and the very big majority of us who live here have indigenous blood. And I would just mentioning that this is part of what was called La Raza Cósmica,
Yeah.
and the mayor exhibits that very much, and I thank
Oh,
him
I
for
see.
that.
For some reason, I heard that, and I thought, no. But there are people who do deny, and I've personally, never mind. Soy de la raza cósmica, enough said. But I was shocked when I moved to New Mexico. I had some friends when I was in law school who were from Albuquerque, or Raton. They call it Raton, but it's Raton. And they all said they were Spanish. Y estaba yo más güera que ellos, ¿cómo estarían de prietos? I was the one, it's like my skin was lighter than they were, but they were saying they were Spaniards. But so I found that very interesting, because I grew up during the area of Mecha and Chicano studies and all that sort of stuff, and we were really proud of La Raza Cósmica.
Yes.
And I thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront again, 50 years later, because we've lost, I think, a lot of who we are, our identity. Other cultures really celebrate who they are, and sadly, a lot of us have been, and I include all of us, have been, what's the word? We've become, what's the word? We've learned to suppress who we are in order to succeed. And when you do that, you lose who you are. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this, and I will do whatever I can as an individual and jointly with my colleagues to promote your endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
We'll put you in charge of the Mitote committee. Yeah, I knew she would.
We
She has it all
were
written.
we were even kidding about once this gets going, we'll probably print out some T-shirts saying, "Soy mitotero con gusto."
Wait a minute. You have to make T-shirts that say "Soy
No.
mitotera." Mitotera.
I'm sorry, forgive me, yes.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? So then we'll go ahead. So the PRC is made up of a couple city councilors, maybe 2 to 3, and then there's other staff there. And so what will happen now is it'll be moved to this committee, and they'll hear it a little bit more in detail, probably ask you a few more questions. I mean, if it goes as quick as it went here today, it doesn't look like they're gonna ask you too many questions, but you just kind of talk about what you just talked about here, and most likely, they'll probably say, okay, move it forward, and then we'll bring it up for a resolution, and then the resolution will then have a committee, like you mentioned, which I think is a great idea, and then they'll come forth with which day to use as Founder's Day, obviously with your input, and then they'll probably want to just verify a lot of the information that you said, and I'm sure the committee will look at that.
Thank you all.
Very good. Well, thank you, and I didn't, you're very sharp for 82-year-old, extremely on top of it. How many books have you written, Carlos?
This is my second book.
Second book,
I'm
okay.
not a writer, I'm an activist, but out of necessity, I've had to write these two books, and both of them won awards. This one, I Know Where the Bodies Are Buried, got third place in history by the International Latino Book Awards, even though it was a book on family history. And the International Latino Book Awards, they're just now sponsoring their 26th gathering of awards for books written by Latinos, and this is sponsored by Edward Olmos, who is running that organization, and a very powerful organization. And so I'm just blessed that they recognized that I not only got third place in history, but my first book on trying to bring Geronimo home, or his remains home, that won first place on books into movies, and that's why there was so much interest in different areas, and I hope I can still finish some of that up.
Very good. So you weren't contacted by the FBI about where the bodies were buried? No? No?
I welcome them any day of the week.
Because there's no statute of limitations on that, so.
No.
All right, well, thank you, and thank you again
Thank
for
you
bringing
very much.
this
Thank you
information
all.
forward. Okay, next is going to be the item 4.2, Tell Shore Fund Investment Strategy. Erica Huckus will be leading off. Can you beat this previous presentation there, Erica?
I doubt it. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council members. Today we will be presenting the Telshore Fund Allocation Strategy results. Mike Anderson with RBC Wealth Management conducted interviews with the mayor and council members and also provided the portfolio analysis. Mike has over 27 years of financial experience and has held various management positions with RBC, Merrill Lynch, and TD Waterhouse. We're going to start with some background on the Telshore Fund allocation. Resolution 07378 was passed on June 18th, 2007. That's about 15 years ago. And it established an investment strategy for the Telshore Fund. The proceeds to be invested was $24 million. 60% was invested in the State Investment Council, and 40% was managed by the treasurer. $14.4 million was invested in the SIC, $7.2 million was allocated in the large cap, $4.8 million in the mid-small cap, and $2.4 million in international. And that left $9.6 million to be invested by the treasurer. Next, we go to council needs and feedbacks. This information was gathered from the interviews that Mike conducted with the mayor and council. Council would like to fund projects on a more frequent basis, generate more investment income to fund more projects, consistent withdrawal schedule, develop a systematic withdrawal formula, screen for environmental, social, and governance investment, and maybe withdraw $3 to $5 million to fund current projects. Our target risk, current investment portfolio objective is growth with moderate risk. The recommendation is investment objective growth and income with risk level moderate. This is a change in market value for for fiscal year 2023. Again, this is just what's in the State Investment Council. The portfolio balance on June 2022 was about $27.5 million. With $520,000, in investment income, and we paid about $55,000 in fees. with our unrealized gain of $4.4 million. So our ending balance as of fiscal year 2023 is approximately $32.3 million. Our current investment strategy, we're going to start now and go over, we have 3 investment strategies that we're going to discuss. This does not include, again, any amount currently managed by the city. This is only what's in the State Investment Council. So strategy 1 is no change in what we're currently doing, which will produce approximately $500,000 in investment income annually. And this is the allocation in the different pools within the investment council. We have 36% to large cap, US large cap, active, 27% US large cap passive, 25% in the small mid cap active, and 12% in international development, developed passive. Basically, the active is the portfolios rebalance more frequently than the passive. That sometimes is rebalanced annually. If not annually, then sometimes it doesn't get rebalanced at all in the year. We're gonna move on to strategy 2. Under this strategy, we reallocate $5 million within the State Investment Council. We allocate $2.5 million to the US Core Plus bonds and $2.5 million to the real return portfolio. The $5 million will come, we're gonna do $1 million from the international development and US small mid cap, and $1.5 million from the US large cap active and the US large cap passive. Then we have the remaining balances for each of the individual pools. This investment strategy, the reallocation would produce approximately $710,000 in investment income annually, with additional $5 million reallocated into higher yield pools. So this would be our new allocation if we were to go with strategy 2. Next, we're moving to investment strategy 3. This strategy would be a combination of reallocation within the State Investment Council and withdrawal from the State Investment Council to be managed by the city. Here we have $2.5 million that we would reallocate within the State Investment Council to the US Core Plus bonds, and $10 million would be withdrawn from the State Investment Council, and it would be managed by the city with assistance from an investment advisor. This would bring approximately $900,000 in investment income. This is how our new investment strategy, this allocation will look under strategy 3. The allocation estimated yield is 2.76%, and this is mainly due to high yield investment and dividend paying equities. The $12.5 million would come, $1.5 million from the international, $5 million from the US large cap active, $3 million from the US large cap pool, and another $3 million from the small mid cap pool. This is just a summary of the previous slides. So with our current, if we leave our portfolio how it is, our estimated yield in 12 months is 1.61%, which would give us about $120,000 in investment income annually. The strategy 2 is just reallocating within the State Investment Council. The estimated yield is about 2.2% with an estimated income of $710,000 per year. The rebalancing of the $12.5 million, which is our strategy 3, that yields the yield for that is 2.76%, and that would give us approximately $900,000 in investment income annually. In conclusion, so to increase investment income, we would need to diversify the current portfolio in the State Investment Council, withdraw some money for the treasurer to manage that investment, and again, increase in investment income would increase the project funding. One thing I missed mentioning on the previous slide is that although strategy 2 and strategy 3 produce a higher investment income. The risk level remains moderate, so we're not going up in our risk level to get those additional returns. It would just be the reallocating the money or having some managed by the city. Our next steps, a resolution to come to council for approval on an investment strategy. We would like to review the investment strategy every 3 to 5 years with all the changes in the market. That would assist us with helping this fund keep on growing and be able to provide those investment income to fund those additional projects. And then we would also like to develop a strategy to withdraw excess funds in years of overperformance. So when the market's doing really well, and regardless of what strategy you decide to go with, if we make an additional $200,000, then we need to set a strategy to withdraw that and apply it to projects instead of maybe just leaving it there sitting. So I don't know if there would be like a list of priorities that we can go off. Okay, so we have an additional 200. What can we fund with this? So that ends my presentation. Mike and I stand for any questions.
Sorry, can I ask a quick clarifying? Oh, I'm sorry. Can I ask a quick clarifying question so I can hopefully understand what we're talking about a little more? Sorry, can you go back to slide 6 quickly? Okay, what does the green mean and what does the red mean?
You want to come?
Or does everybody else know that except for me? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Anderson. I'm with RBC Wealth Management.
You can lift and the mic.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay. The green is a moderate growth level, and this is how you are currently allocated, and the red indicates moderate/aggressive. And so under your current investment strategy, you have, if you take a 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 being the riskiest level, the green would be 3, and depending on what advisor or risk level you looked at, that'd be a 4 or 5. It would actually be a combination 4 or 5. It doesn't mean that you can't stay in that realm. It's just technically, for the amount of risk that part of the portfolio is taking, we're really not getting a lot of yield for it. We're not getting a lot of dividends for it. And I want to articulate this properly, is that when the market's up 17%, this portfolio returns 16% as you're currently allocated. It's just on the downside, if the market's down 17%, the portfolio's down 16% that year. What I tried to do throughout this year is solve for a portfolio that would stay at the moderate risk level, but increase income that you could pull from the portfolio on an annual basis. And also, in the down years, when last year the portfolio was down 20%, the portfolios that are run in this dividend and yielding strategy were down 7 to 10.5%. So by design, the portfolio is down less in the bad years and maintaining the same risk level. So I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, but the color scheme doesn't carry on throughout other slides, correct? So we got into like blues and ecrues and...
Correct.
Okay, just making sure. I thought this was something that like everyone was supposed to know and I was the only one who didn't. Thank you.
Okay, let me just say one thing, and then
Thank you,
I'm gonna turn it over. Yeah, let me turn it over to council. So, did you use past performance to come up with these numbers? I presume that's what you did. I don't know.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Correct.
okay.
The slides are based off of the June 30th numbers. We don't have the September 30th data yet.
No,
So-
but the projections, did you use past performance of, how?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I thought so, but I just want to clarify it. Okay, so questions from council? Councilor Flores?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for the presentation. So are you saying that that red money, that should be smaller, a smaller piece of the pie?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and then isn't there a higher risk when you do that? But you're saying this is
The difference
returns
here, so basically, let's say had we reviewed this 2.5, 3 years ago when interest rates were low across the board, my conclusion may have been different. But now that we've had 11 interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve over the past 2.5 years, we now have the opportunity to get higher yielding investments and dividend paying equities into the portfolio that weren't available or would not yield the same dividends as they would now. And so the timing of this is actually quite favorable now for the city to consider this because of the 11 interest rate hikes over the past 2.5 years.
And then when it becomes unfavorable, how long does it take to undo it? Like put it back in a safe zone?
That can be accomplished within 1 month.
Okay.
So nothing's illiquid. We're in the proposal. There's nothing in the private equity scheme or not private equity realm. Private equity realm. A private equity investment may only be able to liquidate once a quarter or annually, but there's nothing in the proposal that would take away liquidity from the portfolio.
Okay, so that would be there would be some salvaging in the event that the interest rates go down.
Certainly, and that's something that I'd be talking with the finance department on, where if you start to see interest rates cut, this portfolio works actually better when interest rates start to cut. So literally the timing to start this is when the interest rates are at the highest or reaching that peak. So it's the timing is very favorable, ironically, and some of the investments on the equity side are back to where they were in March of 2020, right in the middle of COVID. So it's the business in the stock and bond market. There is a fair amount of timing involved.
Well, timing, and it's also volatile.
Yes, it is. Yes, that's correct. That's correct. But what I want to emphasize is that what I'm proposing here, or I solved for, is how to stay within a moderate risk level and generate more dividends for the portfolio. Okay. So not looking at anything that is at a higher risk level.
So our finance department would keep an eye on it, and then if things start to look a little iffy, you can change that.
Certainly, and it may result in a balance of $500,000 from each part back to the main SIC portfolio. So it's fluid in both directions. This is a stage one rebalance, and that's what I tried to solve for. This is a stage one rebalance where if the council moves forward with reviewing the portfolio every 3 to 5 years, we look at stage two. So this is a stage one rebalance, but it's fluid in either direction, where money can come back into the SIC and vice versa, which technically that should be monitored on an annual basis.
Oh, I thought it would be even more frequent, but you're saying annual basis is sufficient.
Semi-annual would be ideal.
Great.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Just a quick to add to that, we get the statements from the SIC annually, and we keep up with, monthly, and we keep up with the market. If we know that the market's the return's gonna go down, then we can go ahead and submit for that to be withdrawn from the SIC. Usually it takes about a month or so, and we can do the same with reallocating within the different pools, or if we're doing really good, we can also go ahead and add to the SIC if need be.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. Councilor Corrin?
Thank you. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Mike. It was good to talk to you on the phone, too. Thank you for this presentation. I just want to say that I'm here for the third strategy, just right up front. I like it, but I did make the ask about ESGs, and I would ask that we consider taking a fraction of that and putting it into fossil fuel-free funds, if possible. You had mentioned 25%. I would ask us to consider that as one of the things that we reconsider in future years, increasing that percent. But I just wanted to check on the viability of that and make sure that sort of gets named as part of this sort of step, because the SIC, I don't think is going to be divesting at any time in the near future, but we can be. So I would ask that we do as part of that, please. And I don't know if that's part of the consideration or not.
Yeah, Mike Anderson again. So yes, it can be. I'll give you an example. As a portfolio manager, I do use some ESG screening tools. For example, any company that will put British Petroleum out there that happened. That hasn't been in any portfolio any company that is blatantly mismanaged, that's been removed. Over 10 years ago. So I try to solve for, let's say, 80 to 90% ESG overlay. And then I also look at socially responsible companies in each sector of the economy. So I'll rank the industrials. And often they're the ones that are socially responsible will appear in the 1, 2, number 3 list. So they're in the top 3. They may not be the number 1, but they might be 2 or 3, and those can go in the portfolio if they pay a dividend. So it's something that can be accommodated, even though it wasn't a focus for time consideration of this presentation.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilor Bencomo.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mike. Good to meet you. Finally in person. We had a great conversation. I thank you, Councilor Corrin. That was exactly my. We had talked about sort of what is being invested in the types of responsible investments. I never knew really what they were, and I think it's important that we do. And I want us to be definitely investing in social responsible entities and trying to move away from fossil fuels. I mean, that's just sort of what we're doing, and we have to live into our values, and I think this council at least is trying to do that. I am also for the third option. I think it's an important one, but my questions are for the Treasury. You'll be monitoring like you do anyway, but deciding where the money goes and when it moves. So my question to you is sort of, I never knew that to happen. And would this be the first time? What sort of expertise is there? Would you contract out with somebody that has that? I would like to know more about that.
Mayor, Councilor Gandara, when we brought our investment to review, we added an investment advisor as part of that. And the reason is because currently we don't actively invest because investments is not the main focus of Treasury. So bringing this investment advisor, the city, the treasurer would have say on where it's gonna be invested when it comes in and out, but they would receive that advice from the investment advisor. I mean, that's what they do. They're professionals at that. They have all the special programs to run all those calculations and say, hey, you know, this one's about to, the price on this one's about to drop or something, and then we receive that advice and act upon that if, just so we can be consistent on retaining that level of investment income.
And who is the investment advisor?
We haven't contracted with one yet.
Okay, but you will?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And that will go through the RFP process, I'm assuming?
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right. So who sits on, so just to be clear, you have that SAC committee, and the SAC committee will, I think, consist of finance, you, and others. And I think it's important that you understand what our values are, right? And that you invest in somebody that's going to, will obviously be responsible and listen, but that have the values that we carry forth.
Yes, and we can include that as a portion of what we want to accomplish through this RFC, what we're looking for, what our priorities are, so we can mold it in a way where we keep it keep all these considerations.
So
as
where do
part of
these
it.
values get discussed? At the finance select committee, or who
Well, we've already gone over these, so these, the ones we've discussed so far, we can go ahead and include them. And of course, other things that come up, we have the Finance Select Committee meeting on Friday. So if there's any more interest in different ones that we haven't discussed, we'll make sure, I'll keep note of everything for when we're preparing the RFP. We make sure that we express what our priorities are, what our focus is, to be sure to, I guess, to demonstrate or to show what we really want as a city, as a council, to portray to the public.
Okay, yes, and then I guess, I would recommend that happen at the Finance Select Committee. I think that's Mayor Bicomo and Councilor Flores. I think that would be fine with me, and then to understand who those social responsible companies are. Would we get a list and they'd go through them and then determine that would be the best way to invest, or how does that? You said you have a portfolio, 1, 2, 3, you've named them, yes? I'm just trying to understand this. This is new to me, and I'm sorry.
Sorry, Councilor Gandara. It would be following the process that Mike says. It's rating them based on, if they're, what their values are, if they tie to ours. And like Mike mentioned, he has the 1, 2, 3. Maybe it's not on the first one, but it would be sure to be included, not just with the first portfolio, but just include some of those 2s and 3s that have those same values that we have as a city.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor. Those are all my questions.
Before I get to Councilor Bencomo, so also if and I think it's a good idea, I also think to bring it to the Finance Committee, if you can also take a look at what the past performance of some of these companies are, because it may bring down, it's possible, it'd be nice if it brought it up, but it's possible it may have brought it down a little bit of a return, and so that council's aware of that and not expecting the same return that was in Exhibit 3. If you have some that can perform as the ones that you showed, be sure to let us know who they are, so that'd be good. Because a lot of times, there's a trade-off for doing what you're doing, and which is good. I mean, we want to save the environment, but I just want, so that full disclosure, it may not be quite the same rate of return that was projected in Exhibit 3.
Yeah, Mike Anderson again. That's correct. We don't have that in these slides, but the upside is not as high. The upside is not as high in the proposal, as far as it's more of a consistent return where the rate of volatility on that part of the portfolio is lower. But yes, it is a trade-off, but it's a timing, once again, where because the Federal Reserve has raised rates 11 times, it now makes sense to consider that.
Absolutely. Okay, Councilor Bencomo.
Thank you. Yes, nice to meet you, Mike, and thank you so much, Erica. I appreciate the presentation. I'm wondering if you have a slide. Today you're looking for guidance on the strategies, correct?
Correct.
Do you have a slide sort of comparing the 3 in 1?
The best one I can show is this one. Again, the first one is leaving it with no changes. The second one is just a reallocation of the $5 million within the State Investment Council. And the third one would be the rebalancing. We leave $2.5 million and reallocate it within the State Investment Council. We withdraw $10 million, and that's where the city manages those with the assistance of an investment advisor, which is where we can incorporate these bonds that we were talking about, the environmental, and look for companies that have the values that we're looking for.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm honestly just so grateful that we have someone like you in the city, because you speak to us and I often feel like you're speaking a third language, and I'm just so glad that you just like live numbers, and so I'm really grateful, but not all of us are. quite as quick as you on this, so I just appreciate this. And then, I mean, I would agree on the third strategy. And I will say that at the Finance Committee, we have talked at length about just like socially responsible investments and commitments. I think that is an important piece of the conversation that we're consistently having. So thank you, Erica. I just wanted to see this slide one more time. Thanks.
Okay, and just to clarify, the dividend you're showing, is there any money going into the corpus? Like, let's say 892,000, but really it was $1 million and 100,000 is going to build the fund up a little bit? Or is it just strictly whatever the fund, the 32 million or so produces, this is how much the dividend is, and so basically the fund should, if in a perfect world, would stay at the same amount?
Correct. And that's where, when I pulled this slide, the next steps, we do want to develop a strategy for when we outperform, like if it's 800,000 a year, and then the next year we make 200,000. So a strategy would be, do we leave it there and just let it accumulate? Or do we go for those projects? Because what we've been doing with the SIC, whatever investment income it's earning, it's just staying there and getting reinvested. We don't pull that annually like we do. We've been using what the city was left to invest. That's what we've been using for the projects currently.
Okay. And to the future council, right? So hopefully, when that land gets developed across Mountain View, and hopefully the city does not sell that strip of commercial, then the revenues can go into here so that it helps build that fund up, and that just gives more money to give out as time goes on. So hopefully that's the case. Or I'll be sitting out there where Councilor Ekman is and saying, hey, you know, that's kind of where it would be nice to go. Because you want to grow that fund, because the more that grows, the more money you're able to give out to the community. Okay, so any other questions? So you've got
Thank you.
Good enough, and you're gonna take this now to the Finance Committee. Is that what I understand? Or you're gonna develop the?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. From what I've heard so far, it's maybe the strategy 3. So just provide some additional information to the Finance Select Committee, and then come to council with a resolution to follow that strategy.
I wanted number 1, but okay. No, I'm just kidding. We're good. All right, thank you. No, that's very good. I appreciate the different choices.
Mayor?
Yes.
Erica, are you going to bring an investment strategy, or once it's discussed at the PRC as well?
Correct, and the
Okay.
investment strategy can, the resolution is gonna be the strategy, and then we can make sure and incorporate all those points that were brought up earlier, to just make sure we keep that in mind of what we want to invest in.
But the overperforming, and then what
Yes.
we do with it.
Correct,
Okay.
that would be part of,
Part
I'm
of it.
hoping part of the resolution, also with the reevaluating this every 3 to 5 years, just so we can kind of stay on top of the market. And
Yeah, thank you.
And also, when you bring it to either the Finance Committee or Council for when the resolution comes, please include those companies, the ESGs and what they're performing, so the council can get a look at it and get an idea of how they work. Okay. All right, that's it, looks like. If there's nothing further, I think we'll just have these 2 items. Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilor Beta, second by Councilor Graham, that we adjourn. Christine?
This is on the motion to adjourn the work session. Councilor Beta?
Yes.
Councilor Graham?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Coram?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondeta?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Okay, it's 2:16 PM. We are adjourned. Thank you.